Hello, and welcome to another episode of Justice Unmasked Family Court Corruption. I'm Meg, your host, and alongside me, as always, is the real JD. Together, we'll expose the injustices, corruption, and heartbreaking stories that often go unheard within the family court system.
Hey, Meg, and hey to everyone out there listening. Today's episode dives into a story that's been shaking the Santa Cruz community and sparking outrage online. This is the story of Maya and Sebastian Laing, two young siblings who were forcibly removed from their grandmother's home, sparking public outcry and serious questions about the family court system's handling of reunification therapy.
On October 20th, 2022, a night that has since been seared into the memories of many, videos went viral showing a disturbing scene. Two teenagers, Maya and her brother Sebastian, were physically forced into a car by transport agents to be taken to a court-ordered reunification camp. What makes this even harder to digest? Police officers stood by and did not intervene, despite the children's loud protests and cries for help.
Right. Watching the videos, you see Maya screaming, "Get away from me!" She tries to resist, but the transport agents overpower her. At one point, they pull her up by her legs and arms, forcing her into a car while she's fighting back. In the struggle, her pants and shirt were partially removed, which is dehumanizing, traumatic, and so disturbing. The incident drew widespread condemnation from friends, family, and community members who witnessed the event firsthand or saw the video online.
You know, JD, when I first watched the video of Maya and Sebastian, I had to stop and catch my breath. Seeing these two kids who look like they could be anyone's siblings or children, resisting so hard and yet being completely overpowered, it was one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever seen. I can't stop thinking about how Maya's sense of safety and trust must have been shattered in those moments. And Sebastian, too. He's only 11 years old. These children have been through something no child should ever have to endure.
It's gut-wrenching, Meg. When we talk about these cases, it's so easy to feel powerless. I've seen other cases over the years where courts order these reunifications, and the focus isn't on the children's voices, even when those voices are clear and strong. Here we have Maya, a young girl who was brave enough to speak up and say she felt unsafe with her mother. But instead of protection, she got exactly what she feared. And to add to that, police officers were there, but they didn't intervene to stop what looked, to any outsider, like an abusive situation.
And this was all part of a court order. The family court judge, Judge Rebecca Connolly, ordered Maya and Sebastian to be taken to a reunification camp under the guidance of Dr. Lynn Steinberg. The children were cut off from their father and grandmother and taken to a camp meant to reunify them with their mother, despite Maya's clear and consistent allegations of abuse against her mother.
Meg, these camps claim to fix so-called parental alienation, often by forcing kids to reject the parent they feel safe with and reconnect with the other parent, even if they've alleged abuse. This family's case is part of a larger, very troubling trend with reunification therapy, and here, it seems like this reunification camp began with pure trauma.
To give listeners some background, reunification therapy and reunification camps are meant to repair relationships where a child is believed to be alienated from a parent. But critics point out how often these camps are more about enforcing court-ordered relationships rather than truly helping the children. When Maya and Sebastian were removed, their case was one of many cases handled by these for-profit reunification programs, where the rights and welfare of children often take a backseat to money and courtroom agendas.
And while Santa Cruz officials like Mayor Sonia Bruner and Supervisor Ryan Coonerty have voiced outrage, calling the videos gutting, the court's control over these decisions makes it hard for local leaders to intervene. Coonerty and others are demanding greater oversight, especially of private companies like Assisted Interventions, Inc., which handled the removal. But until there are systemic changes, these forced reunifications can continue.
One major part of Maya and Sebastian's story that stays with me is that they were denied a voice. They were denied agency in their own lives. And even though Maya tried to file a restraining order against her mother just one day before the forced removal, her plea didn't protect her.
That's the heartbreaking irony, Meg. Courts claim they're acting in the child's best interests, but then you have children like Maya and Sebastian forced into situations they're desperately trying to avoid. At a minimum, we need more protections for children to ensure they're actually safe, both physically and emotionally.
This case hasn't just impacted the family and friends of Maya and Sebastian, it's mobilized a whole community. After that video went viral, there were protests in Santa Cruz. I mean, how often do we see entire neighborhoods, friends, classmates, and even elected officials rallying like this? It speaks to the horror and disbelief people felt watching that footage.
Absolutely, Meg. Santa Cruz County Supervisor Ryan Coonerty has been really vocal about this. He actually held a news conference right in front of the Laing's home where it all happened, expressing his outrage at what he called a gutting use of force by Assisted Interventions Inc.'s Coonerty, along with Santa Cruz Mayor Sonia Bruner, has been pressing for reforms to regulate these private transport companies. They want an ordinance to prevent transport agents from physically touching children in cases like this, which would set a critical precedent.
And it's not just local officials, JD. This situation has sparked state-level interest too. After the video went viral, it caught the attention of California State Senator John Laird's office. His team is reportedly investigating what oversight exists, if any, over these reunification practices. This story has reached people who have the power to push for real change, and that's something. But we have to keep the pressure on if we want this to lead to legislative reform.
The sheer level of public outcry shows that people aren't willing to stay silent on this. Maya and Sebastian's friends and classmates have been actively involved too. Some of them even spoke at the protest, sharing how devastated they felt seeing their friends treated this way. One friend of Maya described it as dehumanizing, seeing her friend treated as though she were a criminal. And others pointed out that if anyone else, like a teacher or a security guard, had handled kids this way, there would be serious consequences. But because it was a private company enforcing a court order, it seems like they're somehow above that scrutiny.
It's infuriating, JD. This private company, Assisted Interventions Inc., promises on their website to provide a positive and comforting transition experience. But how is a child supposed to feel comforted or safe after being physically forced, against their will, into a car, separated from everyone they trust? For them to market their services this way feels like a slap in the face to any family who's been affected by this type of trauma.
And then there's Dr. Lynn Steinberg's role. She's the reunification therapist who's supposed to facilitate the healing process. But with Maya and Sebastian, this whole ordeal began with violence and complete disregard for the kids' well-being. Maya's own videos, which she bravely posted on social media, tell us that she and Sebastian weren't just scared. They were desperate for help. How can anyone expect children to heal in an environment they were literally dragged into? It's hard to see how this approach could ever work, much less be justified by the courts.
I agree, JD. This entire story, from the court orders to the physical removal, has brought the need for reform to the forefront. But it's more than just this one case. What Maya and Sebastian have endured is, unfortunately, not unique. Families across the country are seeing their children ordered into reunification therapy or camps, often under traumatic conditions. But the movement that's growing around Maya and Sebastian is proof that more and more people are ready to fight back.
For the record, both Maya and Sebastian filed a protection order against their mother, Jessica Laing.
It's important to note that both Maya and Sebastian were represented pro se, meaning they represented themselves in court, while Jessica Laing had legal representation. This is a crucial detail we'll revisit later.
Ultimately, both cases were dismissed on October 13, 2023, by court order, with the temporary restraining orders deemed without prejudice. This means the cases could potentially be refiled.
Local news outlets, including KSBW Action News and Lookout Santa Cruz, extensively covered the story, amplifying the public's concern. KSBW's report titled, "Public Outcry After Sioux Santa Cruz Teens Were Taken to Reunification Camp on Viral Video," highlighted the community's demand for change and the call for increased oversight of private transport companies.
Lookout Santa Cruz published an article. After violent video goes viral, Coonerty, Brunner seek answers on court-ordered reunification therapy, which detailed the events and included statements from local officials expressing their concern over the violent nature of the children's removal. Both articles brought further attention to the case and contributed to the growing public pressure for answers and accountability.
On the evening of October 20th, 2022, 15-year-old Maya Laing reached out to Tina Swithin from One Mom's Battle, deeply distressed. She recounted the terrifying events of that night, sharing videos that documented the forced removal of her and her 11-year-old brother, Sebastian, from their grandmother's home in Santa Cruz.
Maya's account painted a chilling picture. She and Sebastian were hiding at their grandmother's house, fearing what was to come. They knew that court orders were in place to transport them to a reunification camp run by Lynn Steinberg, a controversial figure in the world of reunification therapy. The transport agents, or transporters as they are often called, arrived from Assisted Interventions, Inc., a company known for their forceful tactics.
Maya's videos captured the escalating tension. She repeatedly pleaded with the adults, identified as employees of Assisted Interventions, Inc., to get away from me. The videos show her and Sebastian resisting as they were physically pulled toward a waiting vehicle. The children's screams and cries for help are audible, adding to the disturbing nature of the scene.
According to Maya, the adults disregarded her pleas and continued to use force. She described being pulled by her legs and shoulders, her pants pulled down in the struggle. Sebastian, her younger brother, also resisted, even pulling at the hair of one of the adults attempting to remove him. All of this happened in the presence of police officers who, according to witnesses, did not intervene.
Maya's allegations against her mother, whom she refers to as her abuser, are central to understanding this complex situation. She and Sebastian's father is accused of parental alienation, a claim that has resulted in the court-ordered reunification therapy. This is often a highly contentious issue in family court, with strong opinions on both sides.
After the forced removal, Maya and Sebastian's contact with their father and their paternal grandmother was cut off. This is standard procedure in these reunification camps. Children are often told that the abuse they allege never happened, and contact with their preferred parent is severed for a period, typically around 90 days, to facilitate the reunification process with the other parent. This blackout period is a key component of reunification therapy and is often a source of significant distress for the children involved. In this case, Maya and Sebastian were taken to the reunification camp, and their whereabouts are currently unknown to their father's side of the family.
Reunification therapy, as seen in Maya and Sebastian's case, is a controversial practice often employed in high-conflict custody disputes. The goal, as proponents claim, is to repair the damaged relationship between a child and a parent the court deems to have been unfairly alienated. This typically involves intense, supervised interactions between the child and the alienated parent, often in a residential setting, with the aim of rebuilding their bond.
However, critics argue that reunification therapy can be psychologically damaging, particularly when the child has experienced abuse or neglect at the hands of the parent they are being forced to reunite with. The forced separation from the preferred parent and the invalidation of the child's feelings and experiences can exacerbate existing trauma and create new emotional wounds. In some cases, children are pressured to recant their allegations of abuse, further compounding the harm.
The concept of parental alienation, which often underlies the use of reunification therapy, is itself a hotly debated topic. The term was coined by the disgraced psychologist Richard Gardner, whose work has been widely criticized for its lack of scientific rigor and its bias against women. Gardner's theories, while influential in some family court circles, have been rejected by mainstream psychology and psychiatry.
Despite the controversy surrounding parental alienation and reunification therapy, attempts have been made to regulate the practice through legislation. In California, a bill aimed at addressing some of the concerns surrounding reunification therapy was introduced in the legislature earlier this year. While this bill ultimately failed to pass, It highlights the growing recognition of the potential harms associated with these interventions and the need for greater oversight.
The story of Maya and Sebastian sparked a wave of community advocacy and calls for justice. Their friends organized a candlelight vigil in Santa Cruz on October 27th and a protest at the Watsonville courthouse the following day, demanding an investigation into the children's removal.
These local efforts gained momentum, leading to a press conference at Maya and Sebastian's grandmother's home on November 3rd. The family's supporters, fueled by the viral video and the children's distressing pleas for help, continued their advocacy, organizing a candlelight vigil and protest in Michigan on November 5th. Further protests are planned for Los Angeles on November 17th.
Tina Swithin, a prominent advocate against coercive reunification practices, has been actively involved in supporting Maya and Sebastian and raising awareness about their case. Swithin has spoken out publicly against the practices of Assisted Interventions, Inc. and the Reunification Camp, calling for greater oversight and accountability in these situations. Her organization, One Mom's Battle, has provided a platform for Maya and Sebastian's story to reach a wider audience.
Swithin's involvement, along with the ongoing community protests and media coverage, has helped to amplify the calls for justice and bring attention to the potential harms of reunification therapy and the controversial concept of parental alienation. These advocacy efforts aim to protect children from the trauma of forced separation and ensure that their voices are heard in family court proceedings.
We're left with some heavy questions. How do we fix a system that allows this to happen? How do we amplify the voices of kids like Maya and Sebastian? And what can we do to ensure these so-called therapies aren't just traumatizing more families? Today, you've heard a story that goes beyond one family. It's about a system in need of reform.
For our listeners, if you're in California or anywhere else, reach out to your state and local representatives. Ask them what they're doing to address these issues in the family court system. And if you know of similar cases, if you or someone you love has been impacted by forced reunification, don't keep it to yourself. Share your story, add your voice, and help build the movement demanding accountability and reform.
The case of Maya and Sebastian Laing underscores the critical need for reform in the family court system. Their story highlights the potential for abuse and trauma within court-ordered interventions, particularly reunification therapy and the use of transport agents. We must question the existing practices and advocate for policies that prioritize the well-being and safety of children above all else.
Exactly, Meg. These cases are difficult to talk about, but bringing them into the light is how we begin to change things. Today's episode is a tough one to listen to, but it's also a call for everyone out there who believes in protecting children's rights to stand up, speak out, and support reform. And if you have a story, if you or someone you know has been through a similar nightmare, reach out to us through our podcast story submission form. We're in this together, and every voice counts. If you're as outraged as we are, don't stay silent. Demand answers. Contact your local representatives. Ask them what they're doing to make sure cases like this don't happen in your community. Let's get your story out there and let's fight for justice together.
Absolutely. You can find the submission link in our link tree, and we encourage you to follow us on social media, share this episode, and keep up with our latest updates. Together, we're louder, we're stronger, and maybe, just maybe, we can help prevent another family from going through this kind of trauma.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Justice Unmasked, Family Court Corruption. We urge you to stay informed about Maya and Sebastian's case and support the ongoing efforts to protect children in similar situations. Share their story, get involved in your local community, and demand accountability from family court professionals. Together, we can make a difference.
You can find more information about this case, including links to news articles and advocacy groups, in the show notes. Please consider supporting our podcast by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a review. Your support helps us to continue shedding light on these important issues.
Until next time, stay vigilant and remember, the fight for justice never ends.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Justice Unmasked, Family Court Corruption. I'm Megan from Stand With Meg, and I just want to take a second to say how grateful I am for each one of you. Since April, our community has grown to over 30,000 strong on social media. It's incredible to see so many people coming together, united by the same goal, to expose the broken and corrupt family court system. Honestly, I started this journey just wanting to shed light on my own experience. But now I'm hearing from so many of you, sharing your own stories of struggle, loss, and resilience in this system. This podcast is all about giving those stories a platform, making sure they're not hidden in silence anymore. Every episode, we're diving deep into the real experiences people have faced, shining a light on what so many families are going through, but too few people are talking about. If you're new here or have a story of your own that needs to be heard, head to the link in my bio to submit it. I'd love to help share it and make sure it's part of this movement we're building. Together, we're unmasking the truth and fighting for the justice so many of us deserve. Follow us on social media to stay updated, connect with others, and if you have a story to share, head to the link in my bio to submit it. Your voice matters, and together, we're pulling back the curtain on family court corruption. Thank you for listening, for sharing, and for helping us build this movement.